So I was doing work in the house today, not today, but this weekend, and I don't know if anybody has ever had to do this. So I was in my closet, looking at my dresser drawers, going, I don't have a thing to wear. So pile after pile, shirt after shirt gets piled on the bed. Next thing you know, I had to take a picture of it, and I sent it to a friend, and I said, it's bigger than me. Can I claim it as a dependent on my taxes? Because all my clothes were laying on my bed, and I had absolutely nothing to wear. You put on a shirt and go, nah, this shirt, it makes me look like a giant banana. You try another, no, this one's way too tight. And pretty soon, if you were like me, your bed is covered in a mountain of fabric, and you are standing there in your socks, completely frustrated. We care a lot about what we wear, don't we? But today, the Apostle Paul wants us to talk about clothes that we wear on the inside. He wants to talk about our habits. He wants to talk about our words. He wants to talk about how we treat people that are around us. So writing to a group of believers in Ephesus, Paul says that following Jesus means a total wardrobe change. And you don't even have to go to Kohl's. He tells them it is time to take off the old dirty rags and put on brand new sets of clothes. And he gives us one simple phrase to carry home with us and to take with us for this week. So, ditch the dirt, wear the grace. Everybody say that with me. Ditch the dirt. A little bit louder. Ditch the dirt. Wear the grace. I can stay here all day long if I want to. So ditch the dirt, wear the grace. So to get where Paul is coming from, we have to look closely at the human heart. In verse 17 and 18, he describes a life lived apart from God as number one, dark, blind, and specifically hardened. Now the original Greek word that he is using here is porosis. It's a medical term, and it means a thick, unyielding callus. So a bone turned to stone, so to speak. It describes a heart that has gone completely numb. And when your heart is calloused, when your heart is like stone, when your heart has gone completely numb, you lose the ability to feel. You can't feel God's love, and you can't feel the pain of the person that is standing right next to you. So now your instinct, if you're like anybody else I've run across this week, your instinct is to blame your circumstances. Does anybody remember the cartoon Tom and Jerry? Keep that in mind. I'm coming back to that. Because our instinct is to blame our circumstances. We think if I just had a better job, or if I just moved to another town, or if I changed my situation, then I'd be happy. We blame the world around us. And there's this one little saying that came off of a Tom and Jerry cartoon I remember from my childhood. It said, no matter where you go, there you are. All your circumstances, doesn't matter if it's changing or not. We blame the world around us, and we think, if it changed, I'd be happy. But the Bible shows us from the very beginning that the environment around us, the world around us, is never the real issue. Think about history's two greatest environmental resets, the Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark. Eden, this was a flawless paradise. There's no crime, there's no stress, there's no broken systems, yet humanity still rebelled because the seed of distrust grew inside a numb human heart. And the centuries later, God completely cleaned the earth with a great flood. He washed the entire planet clean and handed Noah's family a pristine, brand new world. But then the very moment they stepped off the ark, a bitter, broken family crisis exploded right inside Noah's tent. You see, the flood washed away the mud on the outside, but it couldn't touch Noah's heart on the inside. It washed away the mud on the outside, but it couldn't wash Noah's heart clean on the inside. He carried the real problem onto the boat with him, right inside his own chest. And when our hearts are hard, we walk around wearing some pretty, incredibly ugly spiritual clothes. So Paul gives us a hint. He lists this in verse 31. We walk around with bitterness, with rage, with shouting, with slander, with gossiping, with always complaining, with backbiting. If you walk around in a shirt covered in thick, wet mud, nobody wants to sit near you. But we keep putting the dirty clothes on day after day after day because we're afraid. Paul says, though, that the reset has to happen on the inside. So when the mud of bitterness, when the mud of anger, when the mud of gossip, when the mud of slander calls your name, you just say, ditch the dirt and wear the grace. So say it with me again, ditch the dirt, wear the grace. Y'all are getting better now, good. So how do we do it? How do we take off those heavy old clothes and soften a numb heart? This is where I like Paul a lot, because Paul tells us, he says, put away your old self. That sounds easy, doesn't it? Just put away your old self and put on the new self, created to be just like God. In the early church, when somebody decided to follow Jesus, when they wanted to get baptized, they went down to the river. They went down to the river to get baptized. Before they stepped into the water, they would physically take off their old clothes. They would go completely under the water, and when they came up on the other side, somebody would hand them a brand new, clean, white robe to put on. It's a public declaration. It's saying the old me is dead. The old me is gone. The person covered in mud is gone. I am a new person now. Church, this new wardrobe was costly. It was not cheap. It represents a deep, costly love. We see the price tag on the night that Jesus was betrayed. At the Last Supper. At the Last Supper, the King of the universe stood up from the table, took off his outer robe, wrapped a common towel around his waist. He put on the clothes of a slave. He stepped right into the literal dirt of our human mess, and he washed his disciples' feet. Let that sink in. He showed us that authentic relationship requires us to lower ourselves to serve. And then, if that weren't enough, Jesus went to the cross. There, the ultimate environmental reset took place. Not by washing the world with a flood, but by pouring out his life. On the cross, Jesus was stripped completely naked. He took on our dirty, mud-stained clothes, the ancient bitterness that was carried from Eden, the hidden sins that were carried off of Noah's Ark, and everyday anxieties that you and I both have. And he died in them. He died in them. And in return, he hands us his clean, white robe of righteousness. Because of the cross. Because of the cross. Not because of you, not because of me, because of the cross, you can rest in a beautiful, unshakable, unbreakable truth. God loves you right now, exactly as you are. And nothing is ever going to change that. Talk about Daddy's love, the love of a father. God loves you right now, exactly as you are. You don't have to earn it. You can't earn it. The King of the universe bought that robe for you with his life. And because you are perfectly secure in his love, you can finally take off that heavy defensive armor of bitterness and say, I don't need to protect myself with this anymore. When fear tells you to put on the old armor, you just think and you say to yourself, ditch the dirt, wear the grace. So what does this new outfit look like? Again, Paul is great. Paul is very good. Paul tells us exactly what it looks like. He doesn't leave us guessing. He gives us a practical guide for how to dress ourselves. And guys, we need that every once in a while. He gives us a practical guide for how to dress ourselves each and every morning based on this costly love. Number one, truth. First, we wear the truth. Paul says to put away lying, to speak truth because we belong to each other. Lying destroys trust, and without trust, authentic relationship is impossible. So if we could travel back in time to when I was teaching at Frostburg, and I was teaching ethics classes, and I would ask every single class, is it ever okay to lie, cheat, steal, and hurt somebody? And to a class, every single class said, yes. If it means I get something I need. Okay. It's okay to lie if I get something I need. It's okay to steal if I get something I need. But lying destroys trust. And without trust, authentic relationships are impossible. Second, anger. We wear safe anger. He says, be angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. This is one that's very personal for me because there have been times I message my daughter, my stepdaughter, my kid, and I go, Pastor feels like throat punching somebody today. And she goes, do it. Just tape it for me. And then I realized, okay, I got to pray instead of talk to her about it. But notice he doesn't say never get angry. He just says, be angry if you want to. If you feel angry, be angry. Just do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. If you see somebody being treated unjustly, you should get angry. That should really anger you. That is holy anger. But if you hold on to it, it turns to bitterness. Holding on to anger is like keeping a hot coal in your hand, just waiting to throw it at somebody. You're the only one that's going to get burned. So third, verse 29, we hear these helpful words. Let no evil come out of your mouth, but only what is useful for building up. I remember as a kid growing up, I'm going to tell you a story on Mom here in a second. I remember as a kid growing up, and Mom said there's certain words we do not use. One of them was hate. So then, I don't know how old I was when I did this, and I went and I got my great-grandmother's thesaurus. I was a little kid. How I knew what a thesaurus was, I don't know. And I found every other word that said the same thing that hate says. And I'm sure I went around the house going, I abhor that. I abhor this. I was legally saying I don't hate, but I missed the point. I missed the point of only letting things that are useful for building up come out of my mouth. So before you open your mouth this week, just ask yourself one simple question. Is what I'm about to say going to build this person up or tear them down? I like seeing people look around at other people now when I say that. And let's be completely honest as we're finger pointing. Let's be completely honest this morning. I don't get this right any more than you do. I don't get it right all the time. Nobody does. We're messy. We stumble. We end up right back in the mud time to time. Think about why we struggle. Paul mentions stealing in verse 28. And why do people steal? It comes from a deep fear that there isn't enough. An old outfit of scarcity that tells us to grab whatever we can to survive. But our new outfit, that new outfit we gained, it's built on absolute security. When you know you're safe, when you know you're safe in the abundant love of Christ, you don't have to take from others anymore. You're free to work honestly, not just to survive, but so you can actually have something to share with the person who's hurting. So because we're striving for that kind of security, Paul, he's great. He brings it all home together in verse 32. And here's what he says we need to do. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ has forgiven you. Serving Jesus means we wear these new clothes around everybody. No exceptions. Around everybody. It means the person who votes differently than you, the neighbor whose dog barks all night long. I almost took that out. Because 2 dogs bark and say hi to me every time I come out of my house. I've gotten used to it. Even the person who deeply hurt your feelings last week. No exceptions. Even your sister when she steals your clothes and doesn't take them back. No exceptions. So let me show you what this looks like in real life. A few years ago in a church in this city, there was a man named John. That's not really his name, but I'm going to say John. There was a man named John who was sitting in his usual church pew. Because while we don't have assigned seating in the United Methodist Church, we have assigned seating, let's be honest. People sit in the same pew year after year after year. But he was sitting in his usual church pew. John loved his church. Everybody that loves your church, raise your hand. I love this church, and I've only started. I snuck in here. I was putting out the whatever these things are called, the bulletins. And I was like, nobody else is here. I'm going to snoop. So I went down to the basement, and I'm looking everywhere. I'm inspecting, and then I go up to I'm like, there's a pool table here. There's a ping pong. There's a balcony window view. I'm like, this is cool. And I'm messaging friends going, you got to come to this church. This church is cool. This church is gorgeous. Just don't look at the top of the desk. But he's loving. He loves his church. He likes things predictable. He likes things, the same thing to happen, so he feels that predictable safety. And then one day, a young man named Marcus, he walks through the back doors. Now Marcus, as you can tell, my tone has changed a little bit. He spent the last 3 years at that point living on the streets. His clothes were heavily stained. He was covered in tattoos. And the last time he took a shower was probably in the Carter administration. He was a little ripe. So Marcus walks down the aisle and he sits in the pew directly in front of John. Immediately, what do you think happens? Did you see who walked in? People are gossiping, people are whispering. And immediately, John feels his chest tighten. His old calloused heart decided it was going to go completely numb to this man's presence. His mind told him to protect his space. This is my church. And his comfort. This is my predictable outcomes. John was reaching into the closet of his old clothes of judgment. But right then, John remembered his baptism. He remembered the tower. He remembered the cross. He realized that if Jesus Christ is actually Lord, then Marcus is not an intrusion. Marcus is his brother. And John took a deep breath, stripped off that judgment he was carrying. He tapped Marcus on the shoulder and he said, "Good morning. So glad you're here joining us today." And then later in the service, Marcus starts coughing because he's sick. John didn't move away. He didn't lower his head. He goes down to the kitchen and gets a cup of water and sat down right next to him and hands him a cup of water. And John stayed in an authentic relationship with Marcus for months. And it was costly. It cost John his comfort. It cost him his time. And it cost him his reputation among the people he went to church with, who preferred to keep whispering. But he helped Marcus find medical care. Eventually, he helped find him a place to live. And when John had stepped across that aisle, he showed us what the cross-shaped love actually looks like. He laid down his defensive armor so he could actively care for the person right in front of him. Bold love. And this bold love isn't a vague, warm feeling that gives you goosebumps and butterflies. It is real world action that lifts up people who are hurting. When judgment tells you to walk away, what do? You ditch the dirt and what? Wear the grace. So everybody, ditch the dirt. A little bit louder, ditch the dirt. Wear the grace. Mom, I know you can talk louder than that because you raised me. And sometimes I think my name was changed to, you're not getting in that mud again, sir. So tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off and your feet hit the floor, you have a decision to make. Before you even step out of bed, you got a decision to make. Take an inventory of your heart. Ask yourself, what outfit am I naturally reaching for today? Are you going to put on the old dirty coat of bitterness and carry your grudges around like it's some heavy weight, blaming the outside world for every single trouble in your life? Or are you going, or, everybody say or. Or are you going to put on the clean white robe of Christ, remembering that you are entirely safe, entirely known, and perfectly loved by God? It's time we stop living in the mud. It's time we make a decision to promise to look at every single person we meet this week, every single person we see in our homes, in our workplaces, in our communities, at the diners, at the coffee shops, at the gas stations, as a beloved child of God. So when you feel yourself getting angry, and you will, when you feel yourself wanting to say something mean, and you will, when you want to pull on the old clothes, and you will, but stop and remember your wardrobe. And say it with me one last time. Ditch the dirt and wear the grace. Let's bow our heads.